Is ulipristal acetate easier to access in some countries or in the US, in fact?
It's less used in the US, but in fact, in Europe, people can get it over the counter.
Ah,
It's OTC over the counter. You don't need a prescription.
hi, this is Françoise Girard with the famous podcast, and today we're speaking to Beverly Winikoff, a medical doctor, public health expert, and one of the foremost researchers on abortion pills in the world today. I'm looking forward to talking to Beverly about everything mifepristone, ulipristal, and more. Stay tuned. So, welcome, Beverly, to the famous podcast. I'm so pleased to have you here today. And we go back quite a few
A
years.
long time.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, it's
I'm
really
very
wonderful.
happy to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. So let's talk about what else? Abortion pills and abortion, right? That's one of our topics that we just can't get away from. I saw recently that the inventor of mifepristone, RU486, the French biochemist Étienne-Émile Beaulieu died recently. And he
Mhm.
developed the drug mifepristone in the early 1980s in a lab in France at Roussel-Uclaf, the pharmaceutical company, which is why, by the way, it's called RU, because Roussel-Uclaf, those are the initials. So it's just a tidbit trivia for those who care. Now, you were very involved, Beverly, in the approval of mifepristone in the US by the Food and Drug Administration in 2000. So you knew some of his colleagues, right, at Roussel-Uclaf, and you knew him.
Yes, and I know him as well. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
from those early years.
early years. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So you published recently with Gynuity new research on the use of ulipristal acetate, a molecule that's quite close to mifepristone, as an abortion pill. Now, ulipristal acetate has been used and is sold currently in the US as an emergency contraceptive. So, in other words, a pill that people take in the few days after unprotected sex to prevent pregnancy. And it's sold in the US under the brand name Ella. It's not the only emergency contraceptive that's sold in the US. There are other products that are quite different in chemical composition, so different molecules. But ulipristal acetate has been one of the options for emergency contraception. And what you did in your research is to look at whether or not it could be used for abortion. And now, can you tell us why you decided to look into this? Why look at this molecule, this emergency contraceptive, and see if it worked as an abortion pill?
Yes. Um, if you look at the design, literally, of the molecule, and you put it at the side of mifepristone, you will look at something that is almost the same.
Mm.
I mean, just the structure of the molecule. And it occurred to us that this might actually be an abortifacient if we wanted to use it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that kind of the politics of it was that nobody actually really wanted to know about that.
Ah.
So they would they can could have said this doesn't have an abortifacient effectively, but nobody had known whether it did or didn't because nobody tried it.
Nobody went
Um,
looking, right?
look, yeah, it was just sort of like a design, you know, you look at the molecule and you say, oh, almost this whole molecule is the same, except for a tiny little thing that goes at the end, and it doesn't usually make a difference in the effectiveness for things that already exist. I mean, it's much more akin to uh, mifepristone than we thought when we started to look at it. We said, well, this should be the same thing as mifepristone. If the and no one had, but it was on the market as
Yeah.
EC,
Yeah.
so we knew it wasn't going to kill people. It was already approved. So why not see if it actually could have another effect that people could use?
But let's talk about the result of the research. It was a small study, right? Not a proof of concept, right? Which to show
Yeah.
whether or not it worked as an abortion pill. So what did you find
Yeah.
out?
We found out that essentially, in the barest words, that it was at least as good as mifepristone um, to give an early abortion.
Hmm. Hmm.
And actually, it seemed to be a little better, actually. But
Oh,
we couldn't really discern that it with the numbers we had.
yeah.
But it was at least as good
Mm-hmm.
as mifepristone
Mm-hmm.
as
And
an abortion.
and that's it induces abortion in what, up to 10 weeks? Is that what you tried it, or
In
for
9 weeks,
9
9 weeks,
weeks of pregnancy?
yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't mean it couldn't go further. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's just that we didn't do that.
Right, right, right. And what does that mean in practice? Like, what's the advantage of knowing this? Is ulipristal acetate easier to access in some countries, or in the U.S., in fact?
It's less used in the U.S., but in fact, in Europe, people can get it over the counter.
Ah,
It's OTC, over the counter. You don't need a prescription.
okay.
Now, it doesn't give you the misoprostol that you should have for
Yep.
later, but that's also there.
Right.
But you can get it in pharmacies through most of Western Europe
Uh-huh.
without a prescription from a physician.
Yeah, so that's very significant in terms of access to that particular drug. But as you note, we need a combination of two drugs, mifepristone or ulipristal, with another drug called
But,
misoprostol that does provoke the contractions, right, to expel
right, right,
the
right.
tissue. But yeah, that's, and mifepristone has been expensive in some markets. Like in the U.S., it's not so cheap, is it?
I don't know what the going is for one pill.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was at some point about $50, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not. I mean, but since you only take it once,
Right.
it's not,
Too bad.
hundreds of dollars. But yeah,
Yeah.
but having another one would presumably lower the price for
Right.
both of them.
Right. Right. And so you said you had a hunch that ulipristal acetate would work as an abortion drug because it looks the same, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did,
The picture. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And did you know? And I mean, actually, I have here the two molecules I took. There's mifepristone. I don't know if we can see it on the camera.
Yeah.
And then here's ulipristal acetate. I don't know if you can see it, but
Has another little thing hanging off of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
these little
Yeah.
O's like are here.
Yeah. But the
The-
structure is the same.
yeah,
It's
it
just
looks very similar, right?
yeah. Right.
Yeah,
You don't have to be a genius to say that
this might
these are
work.
yeah.
And do you think at the time, because this was also developed by Roussel Uclaf, no, the
I think so
ulipristal.
originally.
Mhm.
Uh,
So do you
but
think they
then
were doing this on purpose, just producing different variations, or, I mean,
look, I'm not in anybody's head.
yeah,
I don't know what they were thinking,
yeah,
but what do you guess?
yeah. So how are the people working specifically on emergency contraception reacting to this research? Have they told you they didn't want you to publish the results because they wanted to, ring fence emergency contraception
They were. That people were very, very, very upset.
with you?
Really bad for them because this is the way of the world, When there's information, it has to come out.
Right.
And especially if in medicine, I mean, you can't hide things.
Hmm.
And I kept telling them, I think, in different ways, that nothing is going to happen. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
If people want EC, great. You have a product for it. Go for it. And just forget about the other stuff. But, and I think it's sort of what happened actually. I think people are still using EC
Are they
and
still using ulipristal as a emergency contraception?
exactly. It's there, it's on the market, and nobody is trying to get it off the market. So I think maybe it's two dogs lie down together instead of fighting.
Yeah, but how do we know this is going to continue? I mean, I think we can't know, right? That the far right
I
isn't
mean,
going to come after ulipristal acetate, just as they've been after mifepristone, right? We can't
I
predict
mean,
that.
it's really difficult to when you have a scientific breakthrough, let's say, and you have another molecule that does something which we actually also have. I mean, how can you say you can't have it? It
Mm,
doesn't.
mm, mm, mm.
So I feel that people are, in an environment, and people are, what would you say, complacent in their situation. And when something rocks the boat, people get scared.
Mm.
So my idea is, okay, just be like a nurse. Like, okay, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. You can still, you know. So, and I think I have heard very little in the last 4 or 5 months about it.
Yeah. And actually, I was looking at an article in 20, 20 years, oh, 15 years ago in in the Washington Post, that where the far right, the Right to Life and the Susan B. Anthony Society, all these anti-abortion folks, they knew that Ella, the emergency contraceptive, actually was akin to an abortion pill. They knew that. And of course, they've been saying all this time emergency contraception is abortion, which it isn't. I mean, the Plan B, which is a completely different product, does not induce abortion. But they knew. So it's not like, in that sense, I agree with you. It's not like you're telling them something they didn't already know, suspect, right? Yeah.
I suspect,
The
right? They just didn't want people to know about it.
Yeah, the cat
And
is out of the bag for a while. I mean, in a way.
exactly. And I think they were backed up by pharma because because in industry you don't want anything that tars your product, and so if the very narrow uh, kind of people who are actually getting money from this, they were the ones who were fomenting problems about it
Oh, so
because
you're saying the pharmaceutical industry that produces Ella does not want it to be described as inducing
yeah,
abortion because that doesn't help them commercially, right?
that's no, by yeah,
Yeah,
contrary, yeah,
yeah, they're
it's
worried
not good.
about,
It's not good for their product.
right?
Yeah,
They're worried about it. Oh, yeah, fair enough. I mean, there are current attacks now by the Trump administration on mifepristone. We have the new commissioner for the Food and Drug Administration, Martin McCary, who's
yeah.
been suggesting that mifepristone, never mind ulipristal, but mifepristone is unsafe. Now, you've worked on mifepristone for decades. Like, is it safe or not? Just tell my listeners.
It is safe.
It
It
is safe.
is safe. Period.
Yeah,
I mean, we know that sometimes people have a problem, but it's not. This isn't anything that's really dangerous. It's not. It induces a natural miscarriage.
right, right,
That's what it is. And so many people have miscarriages without mifepristone or ulipristal.
right.
And this is something that happens to women very
All
often.
the time. Yeah.
Right. Right? Because it's not perfect, all biology, right? So
Pregnancy. Yeah, yeah. So, what studies is Macari pointing to claim it is unsafe? What's the
I
so-called research, which we know is bogus, but what's the research they're pointing
yeah,
to? I mean, from what I've read, and you don't need to respond to this, but from what I read, they're claiming that women go to the emergency room at great rates after they use mifepristone, but they're not claiming that women are dying or injured
No,
or suffer great harm.
right.
They're just saying a number of women go to the emergency room, and I mean,
Yes,
that does not mean they're harmed. That might mean they're just worried that they're bleeding more than they expected. As with a miscarriage. Mm.
yeah. And actually, the failure rate of very early pregnancies has a very, without anything, a lot of them don't go anywhere. They just bleed.
Mm.
And people bleed when they get worried. They go to the ER because they may not even have found an OBGYN, even if it was a pregnancy was wanted. So, I mean, it's kind of a silly thing to say that people go to the ER.
Yeah, yeah,
People go to the ER with all kinds of nonsense.
yeah,
And also, they're not really urgent. I mean, it's like your 24-hour place you can go to when your doctor won't pick up the phone,
right,
right?
right, right. And maybe it speaks more to the fact that a lot of Americans don't have a doctor and don't have access to health care on a regular
Right.
basis. So when there's a concern, they end up in the hospital in the emergency room. That's their only point of access, right? Yeah.
Right, and that's if you're getting nervous about something, it's 24 hours. So
Mm-hmm.
you go, you don't wait.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, if that's the case, if mifepristone is very safe and it's been used for it was approved in 2000, so we're talking 25 years, like millions of American women have used it, right? What, 5, 6 million? What was I?
I don't know the data,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you have to get it from the company.
yeah.
How sales. That
Y-
would be the best.
That's what I read, that it was like up to 6 million now,
Yeah.
and with very few problems. And so the question then is, why has then there been this cloud over mifepristones from the beginning? I mean, you were telling me you were at the meetings when mifepristone was approved by the FDA in 2000, and you said it was unbelievable how
Yeah.
afraid everyone was of approving this drug. Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on at that time?
I think people get um, their their facts or the emotional bang of facts by other people who are around them.
Mm,
And I think the FDA people um, who these people are not very adventurous, particularly. They're bureaucrats,
mm-hmm,
basically.
mm-hmm.
And they didn't want to be in any kind of skirmishes of any kind or anything. They wanted, everything just bureaucratic.
Right.
And I think it really got them off their kilter. They really, really, really were scared.
At
I
the
don't,
time. Yeah.
yeah, at that time, and well, maybe still now, I don't
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
yeah, but they thought they had all kinds of things. We would go to a meeting and we would have to sign in and with all our names, but they never put down their names.
Mm,
This is literally physical fear.
mm.
And I don't know how it got fomented, you
Right.
know,
Right.
but it was there. It
Mm-hmm.
was, and when we had the part where we had the uh, experts come and talk about it and the data, they didn't do it in the FDA. They didn't do it in any building of the government.
Mm-hmm.
They went to a park,
A
uh,
park.
a park where they had a tent. They didn't tell you where you were going. You had to go to a hotel and then you got a bus, and the bus took you someplace, but we didn't know where it was, so that nobody could come and attend
Attack you.
attack it, yeah, with a bomb or something. So it was all secret, and I mean, it's kind of weird when you think about it. I even sometimes I would take a step back mentally and say, what the heck? what is this?
Because they were approving an abortion pill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the tent in the
It was
park
really,
is like, it's quite remarkable. I don't know that that's happened with other drugs ever.
I have not heard, and first of all, I don't have that much to do with the FDA, but
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that.
No.
You were in a hotel, and the bus came to the hotel.
Right.
You got in the bus. They didn't tell you where you were going. They drove you to some kind of park, and somehow back in the park there was a tent that had been set up to have this
Meeting.
meeting.
Wow.
Yeah,
And well, they still approved the drug despite all this. So
because
obviously
they couldn't not
the
actually.
safety
They had the
record
data.
was so clear, right? And the
It was so
efficacy
effective and so
safe.
safe.
Yeah. That they
I
had
mean,
to. Yeah.
that's the two pillars, really. You
Right.
know, you have to have something that is actually works
Yeah.
and it doesn't cause any harm.
Harm. Right.
So those two things were clear,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they couldn't do anything else.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, they had to approve it, despite all this. But still, at the time, they imposed what is called a REMS, REMS, a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy on mifepristone at the same time as they approved it, which meant that it could only be dispensed in hospitals or by certain physicians who were specifically trained, and it was kept under lock and key, and you had to go to the office to get it and all this. So a lot of restrictions, which I don't know, people don't know what REMS are because they only apply to very few drugs, in fact. Like out of the 20,000 drugs the
Right,
FDA has on the market, as approved for marketing in the US, there's like 68 or 69 drugs that have a REMS, and they include fentanyl and thalidomide, which causes birth defects in children during pregnancy. So we're talking about drugs that really have a high risk profile, but
Yeah,
but
they were thinking
mifepristone didn't have any risk of that profile of that kind, and still
no medical risks.
no medical
But
risk.
there was the taint for the FDA
Ah,
that if later on something happened with it, they could say, we did everything we could.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
I think it was, proactive,
Right.
kind of.
But that made access,
something.
and that made access to mifepristone for quite a while much more difficult than it needed to be, right, in the US. Yeah.
In my opinion, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And now in 2016, finally, after a lot of discussion, these REMS were loosened, and especially during COVID. And now we can mail mifepristone in the US. We don't have to go to a doctor's office to get it. It's not like, it's not treated the way it was.
Right, and so many people have used it, and everybody knows somebody who used it.
Yeah.
So we have the public with you.
Yeah, but it's still, even though they loosened the REMS, they didn't completely remove them. There's always this possibility that it could come back,
Yeah, I don't know. FDA is established to be conservative. Let's put it.
Yeah, and fair enough. I mean, within reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what do you expect, assuming that doesn't work, that he can't find any studies that really point to a problem. There's other lines of attack against abortion pills in the US. They're trying to prevent the mailing of abortion pills by reviving 19th century laws against mailing obscene materials, and they're also the Comstock laws, right? They're also trying to, there's also a lawsuit in Texas, that's attacking mifepristone again and asking that the REMS, those risk mitigation strategies, be reimposed, so that we'd have to go to the hospital again, or to the doctor, special doctor's office. Do you think they can really restrict access to mifepristone anymore?
Well, I mean, they're pills, they're little tiny pills.
Yeah.
If you get a package from India,
Yeah.
how everybody's going to do that? There are so many links in the internet that you can buy it, and now I guess it's a little, less safe because we don't know if it's real. But probably some of the real pharma will also do that
Yeah.
because the fact is they can't know what's in every package that comes into the U.S.
No,
It's too
no.
big. So I
Impractical.
don't think, yeah, and I think maybe some of the people, not everybody, but some of the people who on that side understand that it would be impossible. If I if I if I had a kid who was going to college and I needed to buy some mifepristone, why can't I buy it now? And I mean, it's you can hold it for a while if
Yeah.
you need it,
Keep it in case. Yeah.
if in case, yeah. So I think that it's going to be there'll be it's like water, water gets its own way,
Finds a way.
and
Yeah.
find a way, find a channel.
Yeah.
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 Just,
Yeah. I mean, you're not the only one. I was interviewing others who said the same thing, that the genie's out of the bottle now. It's not going to be put back in the bottle. And now that women increasingly, and after Dobbs, after the Supreme Court um, revoked women's right to abortion and pregnant people's right to abortion, the access to pills has increased because people have sought them, and have informed themselves, and so the
and they
knowledge
know
is much greater than it was 3 years
knowledge.
ago. Yeah, yeah,
And many people, new people who have them, it's staying in their house already.
yeah, yeah,
You-
yeah.
So
What they call advanced provision, right? You just
yeah,
buy
yeah,
a
yeah,
bottle
yeah.
and just keep it there. Yeah, yeah. So you think the abortion pills are here to stay? Mifepristone is here to stay. Yeah.
I would think of it as alcohol. What
Yeah,
happened in
yeah.
prohibition,
When
and
people
did
want
people
something.
stop drinking? No.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, what's the next step for the ulipristal acetate research now? Do you need to do a bigger trial because you?
Actually, the trial we did, interestingly, was so strong
Yeah.
that we don't need to do something like that. But there are things we have to do.
Okay.
Because first of all, we did 60 milligrams. We think we could do it with 30, which would make it cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to try that and see how much, if any, difference it makes.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would be much better for women who
Mm-hmm.
could buy it
Yeah.
in the
Cheaper.
pharmacy.
Yeah.
Cheaper. Yeah. So that's one thing. Um, the other thing is we want to make sure we could use it at a little later gestational age.
Mm-hmm.
Because now um, we've done to 63 days, 9 weeks, and people want to go all the way up in the first trimester.
Trimester, right?
Yeah.
And
So
the World Health Organization does, for mifepristone, recognizes that it can be used safely to 12 weeks, right? So
yes,
probably
right.
that's what you want to
It
test out.
probably would be, yeah. So I think, but we need to have the evidence, and we also need to get the dose as low as possible
Right.
for people to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But so I think that's fun. The thing that I just want to tell you of my own aggravation, which is that people in our group of people who look at things, people have said this is a small group, this is a small trial, but it's not.
The
It's
trial,
big.
the results you published.
The
Yeah,
one is
yeah,
published.
yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at the CI, which
What's
is
CCI?
the range of which you can say this will be true from that
The confidence interval.
confidence interval.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. So there, for that group, for that we did it with, which is about 130 people,
Mm-hmm.
you would expect it would be very large, but it's not.
Right.
It is 94.4 up to 99.9
Effective.
is the real the actual figure.
Yeah.
And that's the range, plus minus. But that's the same as Miffy.
Mifepristone. Yeah.
So I don't think you need anything more to say
Mm-hmm.
that it is equivalent
Mm-hmm.
to mifepristone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think people have not been realistic about their how they interpreted the data.
Right,
Um,
right.
we should say that this is at least as good as mifepristone, and it could be more.
It could be better. Yeah.
It could be better a little
Yeah.
bit, little, but it's very little. I mean,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
difference between 95 and 99. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean,
because
in
they're
an
all,
ideal world, though, Beverly, when you do a clinical trial comparing it to Mife and or comparing it to misoprostol alone or some, would that be a good thing to know those things to see how it
I think
compares?
it's, I don't know if anybody would want to buy that.
Pay for
Um,
that?
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
it's 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 too good. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the way people do um, uh, doctoring is different in every place,
Yeah.
and so somebody would intervene more than another person would, and these are small things. But when you've got something 95% up to
Effective.
100%,
Yeah.
it's
It's
it.
good
It's
enough. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Got
I
it.
would mind if anybody wanted to do it, and I, but I think that it would find out that,
More of
and
the
it'd be
same.
very expensive, but you'd probably find out that they're the same
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because they only put the CH3 at the end of the mifepristone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's basically
The
mifepristone
same,
itself.
yeah, the same molecule. Well, uh, thank you for your insights and thank you for your work on abortion pills all these years and your continued work on abortion pills. I have to say, I was thinking about you. I thought, Beverly could have made a lot of money in the pharmaceutical industry and could be very rich. But she's instead chosen this path of working on this politically fraught, difficult issue, but so important for so many
Thank you.
people. I mean, you've
Thank you.
saved so many
Actually,
lives with this work, right?
well, I don't know. I don't claim that, but it's very nice to hear you say that because yeah, I've been working on this for a long time, and I think it's one of the most important things that one person can do. So
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Keep up the good work, and as we
Yeah.
say, a luta continua.
Ah oui.
La lutte continue. Merci.
Continue.
Merci.
Bien.
Expiro, expiro in te.